Hey guys, welcome back to the Clinical Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Earl, and I'm joined today by Colin Carr. Colin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so we're talking just before we press record on this, but we've got a good group of business owners in our mastermind and in our coaching programs, and this concept or this idea or the topic of real estate inevitably comes up all the time. And not necessarily residential, although sometimes we dabble in that. Most of the topics of real estate that we discuss is commercial real estate, whether they've been in practice for less than a year and they need help negotiating a lease with a landlord, or they've been in practice for a few years now and they're considering purchasing a building. And I thought, you know what, I need to look around. I need to phone a friend. I need to figure out some guidance so I can best support our group. And I came across your name, came across your info, and I'm like, I got to have this guy on. We got to connect. We got to set up a time to pick his brain and unpack everything he knows about commercial real estate. So thanks for coming on and talking commercial real estate with me today.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I mean, let's just dive right into it because I think a lot of people don't know where to begin when getting into commercial real estate. So just let's start at the beginning. Who should consider getting into real estate? Buying, leasing, lease to buy? Tell me everything we need to know on just like the beginning stages of getting into real estate.
Yeah, so anyone who's going to own a practice who plans on having a physical location is going to have to deal with real estate. There are certain like mobile clinics, or there's some virtual clinics you can do. But if you're going to have an actual physical office and presence, you're going to either be leasing that space or you're going to be purchasing that space. So you're a practice owner, you're going to be operating as a tenant or as a buyer. And most people don't understand how much is really on the line when it comes to healthcare real estate transactions. They go in there with the wrong impression of everything's priced maybe similar, or it's kind of like they assume there's like almost like an MSRP, like, hey, I'm gonna go buy a Ford F-150 truck, and one dealer might sell for a little more than the other, but it's going to be pretty similar. And that's completely wrong. Like, the difference between a properly negotiated lease or purchase contract for a healthcare provider and a poorly negotiated or a really poorly negotiated, I mean, it could be a couple $100,000 that you lose in the form of higher rent payments, higher annual increases. You can miss out literally on 6 figures worth of concessions in the form of free rents, build out periods, tenant improvement allowances or renovation allowances. And so it's not like, hey, if I overpay, it's a couple $100 here or there, who cares? Like, we're talking tens of thousands per year, hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lease term. And so if you're a practice owner, whether you're just starting your first practice or whether you've been doing this for 30 years and you've got multiple locations, there's a couple $100,000 you could save or win in every transaction that you're involved with.
Yeah, I love that because I don't think people think beyond just the monthly rent amount, right? Like I think that's like the biggest thing. They look at how much they are expected to make in a month and they factor in what their rent commitment is, and they base their decision, their real estate decision based on that. Would you say that's a mistake in thinking about their commercial space?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this. I would say you certainly want to be cognizant of the monthly rent, but there's so many other variables. I mean, it's a very plain industry standard that almost every lease has an annual increase. Well, the difference between a 2%, a 3%, or a 4% annual increase over 10 years, again, can be tens of thousands of dollars. You get into concepts like who's paying for utilities, who's paying for janitorial. If the HVAC goes out, who has to put in a brand new rooftop unit on the building? Who's paying for capital improvements? The landlord wants to put on a new roof or a new parking lot. Are you paying for that, or is the landlord paying for that? And then you just get into all these other concepts like, how much of the build out are you paying for? If you sign a longer term lease, how much money will the landlord give you in exchange for that long term lease? And could you be borrowing less money, paying less interest? Or could you tap less into your reserves? And so there's all these economic, business deal points that are part of every transaction. But then you also get into concepts that are more business related, like, do you want to have another chiropractor drop into the same center that you're located in? Or if you're a pediatric dentist, do you want to have another competitor come into the same building? Or do you need an exclusive clause? If you want to sell your practice, do you have the proper assignability clause? Do you have an option to renew your lease? Do you have an option to expand? Do you have an option to purchase? There's all these business deal points that are negotiable too. And so I guess long answer to a short question is looking at just the lease rate is a very, very poor way of looking at the deal. There's too many other variables. Certainly, you need to make sure that you understand that, but that's just one aspect of literally over a dozen things that you should be focused on in any transaction that you do.
Yeah, I love that. I love even what you mentioned a minute ago about, even the building improvements and the landlord's commitments to improve the building. Do we pay that? Do they pay that? That's got to be agreed upon upfront and in the beginning. Which kind of leads me to my next thought, which is I want to have a good relationship with my landlord, right? I don't want it to be toxic. I don't want to piss them off. I don't want them to be, always hounding me for this and that, but I also want them to get stuff done. So how do we factor into our agreements with the landlords? How do we get some wins on our end when it comes to landlords?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I like the way you phrase that because, nobody wants to have conflict and confrontation on an ongoing basis. Like, I think there's a level of conflict and confrontation in any high dollar negotiation. So you're not going to escape that at the front end of a deal unless you're willing just to roll over and give the landlord a huge win. And you can't afford to do that. That's a fool's game plan. But once that transaction is over on an ongoing basis, if you pay your rent and you're a good tenant, you shouldn't have any conflict and any confrontation. If a landlord's going to treat you poorly because you negotiated a good deal for yourself, that you can't worry about that. If you pay your rent on time, if you're a good tenant, if you don't disturb other tenants, if you respond to their inquiries, like, you should have a good relationship. I think a lot of people, though, they err on the side of of fear of being afraid of their landlord. Like, you can't be afraid of your landlord. Like, your
Mm.
landlord doesn't have an investment without you being there paying rent. The landlord needs you a lot more than you need that landlord, believe it or not. And so, a lot of tenants will get nervous with landlords that they don't want to upset them. You can't be in a relationship that way. You need to be respectful. You need to be transparent as far as communication regarding your current needs as a tenant. But when it comes to the negotiation, you can't just roll over. There's too much money on the line. One of the best ways you can avoid being the person at the front of that negotiation is to hire a broker to do it for you, just like you would hire a CPA or an attorney or a marketing firm or a consultant. You hire people to help you with things that maybe you're not as familiar with, or maybe you're not an expert in, and then those people help level out the process. Like, it's very rare that landlords get mad at us in a deal. Like, they know we're experts, they know that we're educating our clients, and they know that we're here to protect our client from losing a ton of money. And to that measure, most landlords also use representation because they want the help and they're professional landlords. So, if you get involved in an issue that's legal, you need an attorney. If you have if you have a tax issue with the IRS, like, you're dealing with a CPA or a tax attorney, you're not fumbling through it yourself. If you're dealing with a high dollar negotiation for a 5, 7, or 10-year deal for a lease or a purchase, and there's hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line, again, you're hiring someone to help you the process to protect you. And that's a great way for you to stay out of the crossfire and then to keep that relationship even more equitable with that landlord.
Yeah, so let's go into a little bit of the creativity aspect of some deals that you've either created yourself or you've witnessed in the healthcare sector. And maybe I'll share with you mine, where I wanted to build out a completely empty. It used to be an old CT suite, a CT scan suite, where it was a huge machine in the back, lead lined room and everything, and it was completely not used for about 20 years. And I came in and I said, "Hey, I'd like to rent this space, but I want to build it out my way, and I want to factor in rent, future rent credits down the road based on every dollar I invest into building out the space." So the way that I structured this deal, and I'm open to your feedback, because actually it worked out well for me, but um, I wanted rent credits, but my landlord wanted me to stay longer. Go figure, they wanted me to stay longer. So what I did was, let's just say it was $10,000 to build out the space, and we agreed to split the renovation 50-50. Then the year one, I got no rent credits for year one. Year two, I got 25% of the build out in rent credits, and year three, I got the next 25 in rent credits. And if at any point I decided I want to leave, then I would basically forfeit those, the rent credits, or my investment into building out the space. But the longer I stayed, the more rent credits I received, which kind of checked the box for him that I would be there for at least 3 years. What are your thoughts on something like that?
Yeah, I mean that there's a lot of ways to structure deals. So I would say this: there's no perfect way to structure a deal because everyone's needs are different.
Right.
I think if you get into a larger bill, like let's say the bill's going to cost like $200,000, which that's honestly not that expensive for a lot of healthcare users. That could be even a fraction of the cost. In that scenario, you would be better off, in my opinion, to get the landlord just to cut a check up front so that you're not fronting that amount of money
Yep.
and then either dipping into your reserves, or you're not paying interest to your bank or your lender on that full amount getting reimbursed later. So most of the build out allowances that we negotiate, we're looking for the lender to cut a check up front. Now, the times when they don't do that is if they're not capitalized well. If they don't have the money, then sure, doing rent credits or more free rent or offsetting, there's no problem. It's honestly like it's a fulcrum scale. You got two sides to it, and you're trying to figure out how do you balance it. If you're well capitalized and you got the cash and you don't mind putting it in there, and the landlord doesn't have the money, then offsets or rent credits, free rent, fantastic. If you don't want to borrow as much money or don't want to tap into your cash as much, that's how we structure most of our deals. And that's where we're getting landlords. They're just cutting checks up front. So, let's say that the build out's going to be $200,000. Let's say it's a 2,000 foot space. It's $100 a square foot. We get $50 a square foot, a half the build out allowance from the landlord. They just cut a check once that build out's complete or in incremental progress.
Right.
That's a great way to do it. And we still go after free rent. We still go after free build out period. So it really depends on the landlord, the motivation, how much vacancy do they have, how long has the space been vacant for. There's all these factors that go into the deal. And I can tell you in a second how we figure out which one's the right or the best way to do it. But every deal is different. And as long as it works for you as the tenant or buyer, we're good to go.
Yeah, I just thought that, I kind of wanted the space to look like how I wanted it to look. So I didn't want to like delegate that, or I didn't want to have the landlord build it out. And then I also realized like I think he was really big on, hey, I want you to commit to at least 3 years. And I was like, okay, but here's what I want in return,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the way that I formatted that. Yeah, but go on into like figuring out what's the um, let's dive a little deeper into like figuring out what type of deal works best in some situations. Obviously, there's an endless amount of
Yeah.
situations that chiropractors might find themselves in, but maybe touch on maybe two, three of the most popular, the most common that you've seen.
Yeah, definitely. And let me hit on one thing quickly.
Yeah.
As far as lease terms, a short-term lease in commercial is considered like a 3-year lease. A 5 year is considered still like on the shorter end. Like a lot of landlords, they want 7-year, 10-year leases. That has to work for you as the occupier. If you know that it's a very desirable property, you know that the size of space is going to fit your needs for the next 7, 10 years. The longer the lease you give the landlord, the more you're going to get back in return. And so people say, well, why would you sign a long-term lease? Well, number one, you're signing it to secure your position there so that you don't have to go get a new space in 2 years or 3 years, or have someone come in and offer to pay more after you've established a great location and a great space. With the patient base, et cetera. So long-term leases secure you, but they also secure the landlord. And if you secure the landlord, they'll give you lower lease rates. They'll give
Mhm.
you higher free rent packages. They'll give you higher TI allowances. They'll give you concessions in exchange for that long-term lease. Like if you're a landlord and you believe the tenant's going to be there for 10 years and you're not going to have to release that space to another tenant 2 or 3 times during a 10-year period, that's very valuable because every time that space goes vacant, the landlords lose a lot of money. They lose money waiting for the space to get released. They've got to do free rent. If there's a build out allowance or a build out period, that's a lot of downtime. So if you'll give them a longer term lease, 5, 7, 10 years, you're going to get a lot more in exchange. And so people will ask the question, well, why would I do a long-term lease? Well, it's because you want more. You want more money for the build out, more free rent, lower lease rates, et cetera. And then the other thing I want to hit on too, you should always get what you want. And so even if the landlord handles the build out, you should be in the driver's seat as far as you will pick the finishes. Excuse me, you'll pick the materials, you pick the design. Anytime a landlord says, I'm going to pick it, I'm going to choose, the answer is no. It's my practice, it's my space, it's my business, whatever you're doing. You should always be in the driver's seat as far as that one. They might handle it or they might hire the contractors, but you have the ultimate say for design. So,
Love it.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, as far as how we structure deals, we're asking questions like, can you see yourself in this location for the next 5, 7, 10 years? If we're looking at purchasing, can you see yourself here for 10 years or longer? Because getting in and out of commercial properties from an ownership perspective is not like residential. It's a lot more expensive. And so you don't buy a commercial property, then move out in 2 years like you would a house. Like, it's not the same transaction. We're asking questions like, is this the area you want to be in? Does this have the amenities, the parking, the neighboring tenants? Is this the trade area you want to be in? Will this size fit your needs for the long haul? And we're tailoring the length of the lease based upon those questions. Once we determine, some of those answers, then we go to market and we find all the properties that meet those criteria. And then we tour those properties. And then what happens in commercial real estate, which is different than residential, is that in commercial real estate, you're supposed to negotiate, or you should be negotiating on multiple properties simultaneously. And this is a big difference, because in residential real estate, you're searching online or you're working with an agent. And when you find the property you like, you submit an offer. Well, that offer is usually done in a binding contract that you've signed. And if the seller says, yes, we agree to terms, you're under contract and you're in a legally binding document. And now you can get out of most of those with objections or deadlines or things that you have to, approve, but you're under contract with one person. And so in commercial, though, you're negotiating on a non-binding basis. You're submitting what's called a letter of intent. And so you might take the top 3 or 4 properties that you get the most excited about. Even if one's the clear favorite or one's the clear winner, you're still looking at 3 or 4. And then your broker's helping you to submit offers on multiple properties. And you might go literally 3 or 4 rounds of negotiations with 3 or 4 landlords. And you say, well, why would you do that? The answers are several. Number one, if the landlord knows you're looking at multiple properties and you're actually getting offers and trading paper with landlords, they're going to know that they can't take advantage of you the same way as they could if you were only talking to them, because you don't have anything to compare it or benchmark it against. If they know that you're getting 3 or 4 offers, they know you're going to see a pretty good spread of the market as far as what's standard or what other landlords are willing to offer. So it gets landlords more competitive. Number two, it protects your time. You don't want to go after one property, spend 2, 3 months working on it, and then realize that this is not the best property for you. Or maybe Starbucks steps in front of you and leases it out from underneath you because they're a more desirable tenant. And then all of a sudden you got to start over again, and you're 3, 4 months behind, the process. So it protects your interest. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. And then the last reason, it gives you the peace of mind that you don't have to wonder, was this a good or bad deal? Like if you go 3 or 4 rounds of negotiation with 3 or 4 landlords, you're not going to wonder if you've got a good lease rate. You're going to know what the market's bearing. You're not going to wonder if you have enough free rent. You're going to be able to see what everyone's offering, and you're going to use one offer against another landlord, and you're going to push them further. And so that peace of mind of saying, look, I've done my due diligence. I know the market. I know I'm not being taken advantage of. I know which properties I like the best, and I'm either willing to pay more for the best properties, or I'm getting the best deal at my favorite property. That peace of mind is invaluable, and that allows you to sign a longer term lease, like a 5 or 7 or 10-year lease, because you're not wondering if you left money on the table or could have done better somewhere else. So, that's how we structure a lot of our deals. And we might be looking at all 5-year deals or all 7 or all 10s, or purchases versus leases, but seeing the market helps you to structure the deal, and it'll educate you along the process.
I love it, man. And I think I want to just kind of continue on the lease conversation, but I also want to dive into purchasing of commercial properties. So yeah, because a lot of people like myself included, that we get into private practice and we get focused on the thing, which is treating patients. And then we hear some people talk on Instagram or YouTube, and we start to realize like, oh, the generational wealth thing, and an overwhelming majority of people provide that generational wealth through real estate. So, and that could be residential or commercial. And that really got piqued my interest into buy the building that our office is in. And what I quickly realized is the difference between residential real estate and commercial real estate. So if you wouldn't mind, share just a few of the misconceptions of real estate when it comes to residential versus commercial.
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, the loans are very different. It's very common to get into a residential property with like 3% down, 5% down. If you're a veteran, you get in with no money down. There's a lot of loan programs available, for conforming loans and so forth, conventional loans. In commercial, the standard down payment is 20 or 25%. And so that's just a difference there. Now, if you're a healthcare provider, there are a lot of good lenders out there that will do it maybe for 10% down. There's even some that will do 100% financing, but it's a lot more rare. And so the down payment requirements are usually higher in commercial than residential. Another thing that's different is the loan terms, or the length of the amortization. In residential, like, it's just the standard loans 30 years. Like, you can do a 20 or a 15-year amortization, but a standard loan is just 30 years. And people just accept that as, of course, it's going to be 30 years. In commercial real estate, the SBA will do a 25-year term, but typically you're looking at a 15 or a 20-year term on a commercial loan. So you're going to have a shorter amortization, which is actually positive in a number of ways. It'll push the payment up, but you're paying down a lot more principal, you're paying less in interest, and so that can be very favorable. Most commercial loans, you're paying that building off in 15, 20 years. And so if you go buy a building for $1 million, put a couple $100,000 into it, assuming there's going to be appreciation of a couple of percentage points per year, after 15, 20 years, you have it fully paid off, free and clear. You probably have an asset that's worth 7 figures. It could be worth $1 million, $2, $3 million. So that's very favorable. But then commercial as well, not everyone's a candidate to buy your commercial property. So getting in and getting out of them is a lot different. Like residential, unless you are homeless, everyone wants a kitchen and a bedroom and a bathroom and a living room, et cetera. But you get into these commercial properties, if they're built out for your practice or your business, you're narrowing down your potential buyer pool significantly based upon its current build out. And then someone could certainly buy it and then rebuild it out, et cetera. But you don't have as many buyers in the pool as you do in residential. So you just have to realize that, you could be in an area where if you put it up for sale, it sells the next day. But you could also be in an area where it takes time to sell it, or maybe you don't have as many buyers and you have to wait longer to get in and get out. So there's also prepayment penalties with most commercial loans. Residential, very rarely do you have a prepayment penalty. In commercial, a lot of times the lenders will stick you with like a 3-year or a 5-year prepayment penalty. And so you don't want to get in and get out in the first couple of years in most commercial loans. Other things that are there too is there's just a lot more factors. Like in most commercial property, you've got additional maintenance responsibilities. You might have an elevator, which you don't have in a house. You've got sprinklers or fire suppressant issues. You've got life safety things. You've got all these different governing bodies that come and inspect your property on an annual or every other year basis. And they'll come in and say, hey, listen, have you checked the fire hydrant on your property in the last couple of years? You say no. Like, well, that's going to cost you $10,000 to get that thing checked, to get it certified. Or, have you upgraded to the new commercial code for this? And you're like, I have no clue what you're talking about. And they'll say, you need to put in another drinking fountain or whatever it is. And it costs you $5,000. So there's all these random things you have to deal with when you own a commercial property. And some people experience very minimal impact. Other people have been subject to significant just assessments and requirements and upgrades and these things. And so you just have to realize there's going to be more that you deal with in a commercial property most of the time than you would in a residential house.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I appreciate and I can speak, from my own experience that, yeah, I remember just being in the office one day and just fire marshal came in to just inspect all of it, make sure we had our fire extinguishers readily accessible. And yeah, and he had his clipboard out and everything, and he comes once a year. And if you're in a more strict township or area of the country, they will definitely, leave your landlord a fine right then and there. And they add up. They certainly do. So yeah, really, really brilliant, kind of insight as to like what you're getting into commercial versus residential. So yeah, I guess what would be the first step you would recommend if we're private practice owners? We might either rent a single unit facility, or it might be multiple units in a building. What would be the first step you would recommend those of us that are thinking about purchasing a building? What's kind of like step one? What should we know? What are the first steps here?
So you got 2 steps that are going to happen really, really closely to each other. It depends on which one you have a better relationship with. But my recommendation is that you get a really, really good healthcare lender. If you're a healthcare provider, get a good healthcare lender. There's a significant difference in banks and lenders as far as what they will or won't do based upon who you are and your profession and your business. So every bank will say they do healthcare, but there's some banks that do it really, really well. They have lower rates, lower down payment requirements, more flexible terms. a lot more accommodating, less fees to originate the loans. And so you want to get a really good healthcare lender, and then you want to get a really good healthcare real estate advisor. And if you have one of those, they're going to probably connect you with the other one quickly. If you have both, you're great. If you have neither, you start talking to people in your industry, searching online, and you start trying to find a good team. And again, if you get a really good, quarterback to the deal, whether it's a lender or your real estate advisor, they'll help you assemble the rest of the team. They'll help you get a really good real estate attorney. They'll help you get good architects or good contractors or whoever you need to help complete the process. And then what you're doing is you're going to market. Again, you can call on properties yourself, but realize this: when you call on a property, you've started the negotiation, whether you realize it or not. You can take the do-it-yourself approach, and if your question is, did you get a deal done, or can you get a deal done? The answer is, of course you can. The question that you could ask yourself, though, is, did I save $100,000, $200,000 in the process, or did I lose that because I thought doing it myself made more sense? And really, you could flip that question over to a patient. A patient would be like, well, why would I come to you for physical therapy? I can just look online and figure it out myself. Or why would I come to you as a chiropractor? Like, I can just ask my spouse to like pick me up from behind and squeeze my back. Like, I don't need to have my kid wear braces. Like, they'll just figure it out. I mean, like, again, you can always do almost anything yourself, but the question is, are you getting the superior result in the process? And the answer typically is no. Like, you can do your own taxes and spend $89 online for some program, but you probably left tens of thousands of dollars in available deductions on the table and gave the government way more than you should have because you didn't know what you're doing. So I'm interjecting here with this do-it-yourself approach, DIY. Like, anybody can get a deal done, but that's not the best game plan typically. So you hire an advisor. They help pre-qualify landlord sellers. They help figure out what you're looking for. They coach you into different areas, markets. They take the pros and cons of properties, and they're helping to educate you. It's a very educational process. Like, you're ultimately fully in control of saying yes or no. No one's going to take your hand and sign a document for you and force you to do a deal, but you're getting educated. You're getting offered, here's what retail looks like. Here's what office looks like. Here's what a lease looks like compared to purchasing. Here are the numbers. Here's where I think we should push this landlord further because I think we can get another couple months of free rent and save you another $20,000, $30,000. It's that type of advisory services that helps put you into a place where you have the mental capacity, you have the peace of mind to make the decision. And so they're walking through the processes. They're helping you identify pros and cons. They're submitting offers. They're helping to coordinate with other key people in the process. If there's going to be a build out, you want to get architects and contractors in that space before you sign a lease or you close on it. You want to make sure that the zoning meets your needs for the building department. You want to make sure that you have enough money with your loan to complete all of the build out plus buy your equipment and technology. They're helping you with budgets. Like, there's a lot of things that are happening. And like a lot of things, it's just bite-sized pieces. Like, hey, this week we're working on this. Next week it's going to be this. And really they're a liaison to help you through the entire process. And ultimately they save you a ton of time, save you a ton of money, and they make sure that you don't lose out. Again, I keep using the same numbers: $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 by signing a bad deal.
Now, this is probably this is the first time I've heard of a healthcare lender. So that's new to me. So where do we find a healthcare lender?
Yeah, so let me start by telling you this. Again, this is just kind of the same thing. Like, it's the same way that people think that like landlords are going to price their properties similar in a specific area, which is not true. You can look at one property and then go across the street, and there could be like a 30 or 40% difference in price. Like, there's no MSRP. When it comes to lenders, it's the same thing. You could have one lender that they'll say, yes, we love healthcare, we do healthcare, but they're going to treat you the same way they treat you if you were a dry cleaner, or you were a sandwich shop, or you were an auto repair. Other healthcare or other lenders that are healthcare specific, they'll say, look, we like healthcare, we value healthcare more than certain industries, and we have a unique product. We trust you to pay it back. We'll give you a longer amortization. We'll give you a lower down payment. We'll charge you less fees because we also want more banking relationships. Or if we can do this for you or that, or if you have a depository relationship, we'll give you a better deal here. There's lenders that they focus specifically on certain niches of healthcare. There's some lenders, all they do is dental, or some all they do is veterinary, or some all they do is pharmacy. And so when you get in touch with a couple of these lenders, you're typically going to see a better product. And that's not, there's no, no magic formula here. It's just, every bank is not built the same way. They have different credit risks, they have different tolerances, and they have different understandings of who they're lending money to. So like saying, well, I'm a doctor of what? I mean, there's a big difference between someone who's going to replace your hip and someone who's going to clean your teeth. Like there's a difference in lenders too, where if you get the right one, they're gonna make the process way faster, way smoother, charge you less fees, eliminate a lot of paperwork. They just have a streamlined process, and they're going to be a lot more accommodating in the future when you go to do a second location, or you want to go from leasing to purchasing. You're going to have an advantage with certain lenders over others.
Yeah, I love it. I think that one of the kind of core values, or excuse me, one of the main principles of our coaching industry and our coaching business is we're willing to hire employees to buy back our time. Dan Martell's got a good book about, buy back your time. So I think that your point earlier about being willing to hire a real estate broker or a real estate a real estate agent that's working on your behalf so that you can focus on other things, right? Instead of you trying to DIY it yourself, or I know it's redundant, but my point there is we are a type of group that are willing to do something like that because it frees up our time to do something else, right? Whereas a lot of
Yeah.
people end up thinking they're gonna put in the manpower, the muscle, themselves, and they realize it took them 3, 4, sometimes 10 times as long.
Yep.
And you're left with, kind of your craftsmanship, which sometimes is not as good as experts in the field. Like you said, what to look for. My dad's he's a tax accountant. He knows what to look for. He knows what deductions to look for. So your point there is absolutely, spot on. So yeah, I guess the next question I wanted to ask you is, how do we do business with someone like you or someone who is, how do we look for an expert commercial real estate agent?
Yeah, that's a great question. All right, so let's put some parameters on here for a second. You know, when you're getting involved in a transaction as a healthcare provider, you're going to be operating as a tenant or buyer. Now, you might be a landlord of properties. You might have residential properties that you're a landlord of. You might have investment properties. But if you're operating as a healthcare provider, you're going to be entering that deal as a tenant or buyer. So you're going up against a landlord or seller. The vast majority of landlords or sellers are owning and leasing properties that are worth millions of dollars. So these are sophisticated people that didn't, sometimes they might have inherited a building or something like that, but typically these guys are pretty savvy. And almost, the vast majority of them are almost always using brokers on the side. Either the broker's listing it for them or they're consulting with them, figuring out how to price things. They have a strategy. So you're going up against someone who's a professional real estate person, and they've got professional real estate advisors on their team. So just realize the cards or the deck stacked against you going into that deal if you're not a professional broker or investor. So the idea of hiring someone is just trying to level the playing field. You're just trying to say, this, like, I'm not trying to take advantage of anybody, but I am trying to avoid being taken advantage of. So that's the kind of the rules of engagement. The way that you start that is, I mean, you can just get online, you can search healthcare real estate advisor, healthcare real estate broker, whatever industry you're in, chiropractic real estate broker, whatever keywords make sense for you. And then you're going to start figuring out that there's a lot of people out there. When you start talking to people, here's what you're looking for. Number one, you're looking for someone who's going to work for you exclusively. They can't work for the landlord and work for you. This is one of the biggest areas of lawsuits in real estate, and one of the biggest areas where people end up with a really bad taste in their mouth. They show up at a property, a guy shows up to show them the space, starts giving them information. They think this guy is a nice guy. He's sending them floor plans and submitting offers, and they don't realize this person works for the opposite party. Like, they have a legal obligation to negotiate against you and to help the landlord or seller make as much money as possible. They have a legal fiduciary obligation. And so you got to realize who's on your team. It's not the listing broker, it's not the landlord agent. They can't legally help you with anything. They can facilitate a deal, but they can't actually advise you. So you need someone who's only on your side of the deal. So you need someone who's going to be exclusively your agent, not the landlords or sellers, no conflicts of interest, and you want them to have healthcare experience. Like, there's some brokers, all they do is work on apartment complexes. Some, all they do is work on restaurant deals. So you don't want someone experimenting on you, just like you don't want a healthcare provider to experiment on you. You want to go to the specialist who only works in rehabilitation or in braces or in root canals or whatever your need is. You want that person. So you want a healthcare real estate advisor who understands healthcare. You want them to be on your side of the deal only. You want no conflicts of interest. And then you should just ask them, why would I hire you? Like, what can you do for me that other brokers can't do for me? Why are you like I'm not looking for you to show me your awards, but like, what's your strategy and why is it different than someone else? Why are you better than someone else? Like, what is it about your process or your strategy that's going to help me capitalize? And again, you might say it a little softer than that, but ask them those questions. Like, ask them like, why would I come to you as a patient? Like, what can you do for me to help me with this problem or this desire? Just like you're going to be able to answer that, they're going to be able to answer it for you as well. And if you can't answer that, then the patient's probably going somewhere else. And if the broker you talk to doesn't give you an answer that gets you excited, that you say, I trust this person, I want this person on my team, then you call the next person, you keep on going. Like it's, you don't settle here. If the first person you call does not get you excited about a deal and moving forward, then call the next person. And maybe you call two or three honestly, just to see what it looks like, because one person might stand out head and shoulders. That gives you confidence that you hired the best person, just like real estate. You go talk to three brokers and one of them is this clear cut winner, then you have even more confidence that you're making a really good choice with that person. And so, you can do that. Another way you can do it is ask people that are influential in your industry who you should be talking to. Like ask the banks, ask the attorneys, ask the CPAs, who do you know that specializes in healthcare real estate for the doctor side of the deal? And if you get the same name a couple times, like that's a great place to start as well.
Yeah, I love it. I think a friend of mine he's on the banking side a while ago. He told me like whenever you're talking to a banker, like just kind of flip it on them. Like just ask them like why should I bring my money to your bank? Why should I, and I like that. That's like you're not really putting them on the spot, but you're doing your due diligence and vetting them, to like, hey, here's my opportunity. Why should I go with you? I mean, people ask me that all the time, like why should I enter into your coaching program? And I'm like, well, I'm not sure you should just yet. And actually, I have a whole different response to that. It's like, hey, two can play this game. But I've done that to other people. It'd be like, hey, why should I use you? Why should I go with you? And I don't just want to take people at their words. It's one of the kind of um, it's in there's a little bit of employee talk, but when I'm having some follow-up conversations with staff, I want to say I say show me, don't tell me, right? Like I
Yeah.
I, I want to see that your words and your actions align. So when someone in real estate or an attorney or whoever is telling me, yeah, we can do this for you, we can do that for you, I'm like, that's great, awesome, great. Show me where you've done it before.
Yep.
Can I talk to another client that you've done this exact process through? Can I talk to that person? Would they use you again? That's a good one. I like to ask. Would they use you again? And if they're like, I'm like, okay, that maybe
Yeah.
maybe it ended a bit tumultuous. But
No, but
yeah,
those are the fair questions though. And
yeah,
no one, you're not saying this, I'm not saying this one. We're not saying it adversarially, and we're not saying like
right.
you're doing it from an arrogance or you're not being a jerk to someone. But if somebody can't answer the question as far as why you should hire them, they shouldn't be even in the running. I mean, somebody should be able to tell you, listen, this is who I am, this is what you're going to get with me, this is what you can count on and expect. Here's where the potential pitfalls are coming. If they do come up, here's how I'll handle them. Here's 25 people that I've done the exact same thing with in the last couple of years. You can call any one of them. I mean, like, there's a really good way to provide your credentials and your track record, and there's a bad way. And here's the deal: there's a lot of really bad real estate brokers out there. Like, there's a lot of really bad attorneys. There's a lot of really bad teachers out there. There's a lot of really bad CPAs, and then there's really good ones too. And
Yeah.
so, you know, the statement of the high, the most important thing to walk away from this podcast knowing is there's a lot of money on the line in the real estate deal, whether you know it or not. You probably don't understand all the rocks to look underneath to save that money or to capture it. And if you make a mistake, it will cost you a couple $100,000. So if that's the case, how do you capitalize? How do you win in your next deal? And you're not winning to the extent of someone losing. You're just winning because you're not getting taken advantage of. And you do that by hiring someone who can help you at the highest level, just like a patient who wants a superior rehabilitation process or a superior level of health and wholeness or a greater level of understanding your education in the area that they're trying to get a different result in, they come to you because you know more and you've done it, you live it and breathe it. That's the same reason you go to a really good attorney or CPA or coach or real estate broker. And the best people in any industry are the ones that surround themselves with, with the champions and the industry leaders in those areas. And so, you can save money by doing things yourself. There's no question. But you're going to lose money in the long run by not getting the best deal or not having the best marketing strategy or not getting enough referrals from patients or not having the best staff or whatever it might be. And so, you can do things multiple ways, but there is a superior way to do real estate for sure.
100%. It's so good. Yeah, so our listeners are we're in like the functional rehabs, kind of blending physical therapy, functional rehab, chiropractic, all of that, right? But we're almost like the antithesis of like the corporate mill-like PT and chiro clinics where it's a volume game. So we will get, and our clients all the time, like we charge higher rates, we see people for longer. And that's the number one thing that people come to us for is actually what we call incomplete rehabilitation. They haven't gone through the complete stages of recovery, but they've been discharged elsewhere, right? So it's
Yeah.
either under treatment or over reliance on just one treatment strategy. And we almost, that's more of a clinical conversation. But needless to say, to your point there, people are starving for that little bit more. Like they know that they need a little bit more, and they find people like us, and they find people in our community, and we just come alongside of them and say, hey, you know what? You're right. You have so much more potential. Like the physical limitations of 6 months ago, like they're on their way out, and you're going to be able to do so much more in the next 6 months. See, when we're talking about it like that, it doesn't become about back pain anymore. It doesn't come about shoulder. It's irrelevant. Like, and I
Yep.
said this before and actually got me a bit in trouble online, but on some chiropractic forums, but people don't buy chiropractic care. They don't buy physical therapy either. They're buying an outcome, and also they're buying, like they're actually paying money now for a betterment of self later. And the same is in real estate. Like if I could segue it back to this, I'm willing to spend money on a good lender, a good agent, because I want a long-term strategy to play out. And I think a lot of people are thinking what it will cost them right now is just not worth it. Call it short-sighted, call it fear, call it, scarcity mindset, or just call it like a bigger headache that they don't want to tackle. Sure, fair enough. But I'm in the mindset where I definitely want to get into commercial real estate. My landlord's open to me, buying that building, but I don't even know where to begin when it comes to hiring a real estate. So I appreciate your insight on that. Let's talk cost. What does it typically cost for a real estate agent to work with us on the commercial side?
Well, that's one of the best parts about doing commercial real estate as a buyer or tenant. You should not be paying your broker as a buyer or tenant of commercial real estate. So just like in residential real estate, it's basically the industry standard where the landlord or the seller pays the commissions. It's the same thing in commercial. So if you've ever bought a house and you hired an agent, the listing agent had a commission that was built for two people, built for themselves as the seller's agent or listing agent, and then they have half that commission sitting there to entice buyers agents to bring them more buyers. It's the same thing commercial real estate. So that's one of the best parts about this is you're going to get representation, you're going to get a significant time savings, significant money savings, avoid costly pitfalls, delays, complications. And then I would say in 99% of the scenarios, you will not be paying for that service. And that's just the industry standard. And every once in a while, there's a scenario that maybe is contradictory to that, but it's super rare. Like it literally is like the 1%. So if you're a landlord and you're leasing a space, yes, you pay the commissions. If you want to sell a property you own, yes, you pay the commissions both to your agent and the buyer's agent. But if you're a tenant or buyer as a doctor, healthcare provider, you should be able to hire an agent at no cost to you. And then people will say, well, is it just getting baked into the deal? Yes, it's baked into the deal, but that commission is getting paid whether you have an agent or not. Like
Sure.
if,
Yep.
if, if you're showing up without an agent thinking you're going to get a better deal, the listing agent is taking a double commission to the bank. They'll be more than happy to make you feel like you're really important and that you're, man, you're slaying it with this negotiation, and they'll say things to you and make you feel like you're really, it's like a 4-year-old wrestling his dad. Like, I mean, who would have known the 4-year-old would have won? Like
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll make you think that you're slaying it. Man, we've never done this before for people. Man, you're really good at this. Like, man, who's advising you behind the scenes? Like, how did you know to ask for that? Like, they'll say all these things and they'll literally make you think that you won. And then just like the 4-year-old goes up to mom and says, I beat dad in a wrestling match, the doctor goes home and tells like their office manager, their spouse, like, hey man, I crushed this deal. And the landlord and the listing agent are literally laughing all the way to the bank, being like, man, who is this? Who is this guy? He has no idea what he's doing. And yet they'll make you feel like you won. So
It's a
yeah,
game, isn't
short
it?
answer. Yeah, short answer is there should be no cost to you as a tenant or buyer.
Brilliant. Hey, Colin, thank you so much for calling on. What, I guess closing remarks, any insights, any key wisdom, key pearls that you've gleaned over the years in working with healthcare providers?
Yeah, let me do this. Let me give you, I mean, I'll give you a quick summary, which is, hire professional representation, find
Sure.
the best person that you trust. We've hit that. But let me give you like three things people mess up on all the time. Don't fall in love with one property and only negotiate one property. Like take the time to go after a couple other properties. It should be a broker doing it for you anyways, not you. So it shouldn't be any of your time except for looking at terms and proposals. It's worth it though to get the peace of mind. So always look at multiple properties, number one. Number two, make sure that you don't start too late. A lot of doctors are not paying attention. They're asleep at the wheel. All of a sudden, their lease is coming up, and like in 3 or 4 months, that's not enough time to get to the market and do the due diligence that you need to. You really want to have a 12-month runway. So don't start too late. Don't start too early. Don't start 3 years in advance, but don't wait till you've got 3 4 months. Start about 12 months in advance.
Right.
Another one too is it's great talking to colleagues and peers, but just realize that a lot of your colleagues and peers have no clue what they're doing and got really average or bad deals. So I see doctors all the time, like, well, I talked to 3 or 4 of my friends and they said that this is how we should do it. And we're like, man, that's just like going to 3 or 4 random forums online and saying, well, I read 3 different blogs that said, that you should, pick something that makes no sense to you as an expert. And you'd say, well, I don't care what the blog says. Like that's really bad advice. So just because your colleagues and peers did something doesn't mean that's the right game plan. And then, I guess the last thing I would say is just stay to the best of your ability unemotional about it. Just realize, look, there's going to be ups and downs in every deal. Anytime you're dealing with a build out with a contractor, there's going to be delays, there's going to be issues, change orders. Like it's just part of the game. Like nobody loves that or wants that to happen, but it's just part of the game. Just like in a practice, you're going to have a staff have an issue that you have to deal with. No one wants to deal with it, but you have to deal with the staff. You're going to have a patient who's unhappy. Nobody wants that, but you're going to have to just address it head on. So just realize there's ups and downs in every real estate deal, especially if you're buying real estate. There's going to be some good days and bad days, but at the end of the process, it's worth it to do it the right way. It's worth it having the best location, the best property, the best access parking, the best tenants, the best terms. Like it's one of those things you do it every 5, 7, or 10 years, but you want to do it the right way each time you do it.
Brilliant, Colin. Thanks for coming on. What, for our audience that want to get in touch with you, maybe to pick your brain or to find resources or maybe stalk you online, what info can you share with us to get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch with us or our team is our website, and it's carr.us. So it's CARR.us. Two main things to look for. Number one, you can find an agent in the nav bar upper right hand corner, and you can start a conversation with one of our experts. We're licensed in all 50 states. We got people coast to coast. And so if you want to have a conversation, pick someone's brain, ask them the questions that we talked about earlier. How can you help me? Why would I hire you? What's your strategy? Start the conversation. If you want to do a free lease evaluation, like, hey, how do my current terms compare to the market? Even if you're like 5 years into a 10-year lease, our guys will do a market analysis for you to give you the peace of mind to know you're either in an average, a great, or a bad spot. They'll tell you in advance, no matter where you're at in the lease. And then also, if you like to self-educate, you don't have to become the expert, but you want to become more educated. We got a huge resources tab that's got literally a couple hundred FAQs, glossary terms, videos, articles. So if you say like, I don't need to become a commercial real estate expert, but I would like to know more just so I'm better educated and prepared, we can get you in a really strong place in a short period of time by our content. And it's a great place to start if you want more information.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll definitely include a link to that in the show notes. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on. You've done a lot of prep work to come on for today, and just a wealth of knowledge. And I can't thank you enough for coming on. You're going to help a lot of people in both scenarios, right? In the leasing and in the buying of commercial property. So Colin, thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Alex.